Coping techniques are the key to recovery. Here comes the good part. It's time to learn to use coping techniques to interrupt depersonalization symptoms and prevent their return. An interesting fact for you. Studies have shown that sensations of depersonalization and derealization are actually a natural protective device provided by the body. Now tell me this doesn't ease your mind. This sensation is actually naturally summoned by the mind when constant thoughts and worry overwhelm it. It just takes a step back to temporarily quiet itself by mildly zoning out. This is its own protection against the constant onslaught of worry. It's a shield against your habit of negative thinking and checking in all the time and fearful thoughts. The mind basically shifts into automatic, providing a less stressful environment in which to function. During this time, you experience a softened reaction to normally harsh stimuli. Surroundings begin to feel almost filtered or even fuzzy, protecting you from the overpowering reality of your worried thoughts. The mind intervenes to calm you and relax you, and although you experience this as odd or unusual, it's actually nothing but self-protection from your own habit of fearful thoughts. Okay, so your reality feels a little blurred, a little strange. But if you think about what's really going on, it takes the mystery out of it and therefore removes the fear. Without fear, depersonalization and derealization begin to heal. It's hard to believe, but feelings of depersonalization actually are shielding the mind from the effects of worry, apprehension, fears, and basically too much constant thought. You're actually experiencing your body's way of giving you a break from the constant onslaught of your own introspection. It does make sense, even though it does feel a little unusual. And of course, the more upset we become over it, the longer it lasts. Whatever we resist persists. So at least you understand now why you're feeling this way, and it is not so unusual once you know the facts. Now we're going to look at coping techniques and learn how to refresh the mind and start feeling like your old self again. This is the goal. It certainly helps to refresh the mind through sleep, through good nutrition, but it also is extremely important to learn how to use the proper coping techniques. These will interrupt the feelings of depersonalization and dissolve them once and for all. You know, sleep does rejuvenate, but when you wake up in the morning and you start worrying, thinking too deeply, becoming fearful, this tires your mind much more than you can even imagine. This requires more than a good night's sleep, more than meditation. You have to learn to turn off that constant racing mind. You have to learn to catch those thoughts. You have to learn to catch the negativity before it spirals out of control. I spoke about this on the last CD, and I want you to continue catching yourself every time a negative thought enters your mind. Remember, this is your ego. This is the part of your brain that tries to warn you about everything that could possibly go wrong, why you're incompetent, why you're incapable. This is the part of your brain that keeps you trapped. It's almost like a guardian that overprotects. And you know what? It doesn't always tell you the truth. Sometimes it keeps you fearful beyond belief. Therefore, you have to take back control. Every time you catch this way of thinking, every time you identify it, you embarrass the brain and it stops. But that's only half of the exercise. The other half is equally as important. Once you catch your mind going along this line of thinking, you have to interrupt it with your adult voice. Right after you catch it, you have to bring out the big guns. The adult voice is the voice of truth, reason, and reality, and that will bring you right back to where you need to be. At this point, you need to look at the truth of the situation, not the fearful thoughts that your brain is serving you. Once you empty that out, you've created a void, and a void must be filled with something positive and productive. Therefore, you will firmly but gently shift into different thinking, and there's plenty of other things that your mind can think about. You weren't always prone to negative thinking. Before you learned this unproductive habit, you always thought about interesting things that had nothing to do with negativity. And that is why you are going to shift back into that way of thinking and leave this habit behind. You know the trigger now is these negative thoughts that slip in and take off by spawning other negative thoughts. That's why it's up to you to quickly identify them and gently but firmly shift into positive, more productive thinking. This is mind clearing, and it allows the mind to heal as you do it. In the beginning, when you first start doing this, you have to be quite vigilant because it's a habit and it's well entrenched right now. That is why you have to keep pulling out your adult voice, using it and not allowing negativity to sneak in. Sometimes the brain gets a little annoyed that you're fighting back, but don't let this fool you. If your negative thoughts become stronger, all you have to do is keep identifying them with your adult voice. Tell yourself the truth about this, that your mind is trying to fool you, that this is your ego, the voice of doom, and it's a well-learned habit, and you have to unlearn it. And your adult voice is the one thing that will allow you to do this. A number of people have told me that their racing thoughts are so strong that it's almost impossible for them to overcome them. Well, let me tell you now, there is a method to do this, and it works. Once you begin using this, you will not believe how it changes your life. Once we go down the line of negative thinking, we become one with our thoughts. We become so focused on this thought that we cannot think about anything else. It's so distracting. What we need to do at this time is learn to separate ourselves from the negative thought. For example, let's say you're lying in bed at night, you're trying to go back to sleep, and all of a sudden a negative, frightening, and distracting thought interrupts your consciousness. It could be a thought about your health, a worry about someone in your family, a worry about business. It doesn't matter. It's a thought that sticks and keeps racing through your mind and tiring your mind as well. This is a thought you want to separate yourself from. Remember, when a thought feels important, it feels as if you and the thought are one. This is not the case. This is when I want you to stop and look at what you're thinking about. Look at the thought. Look at it from a different perspective. Separate yourself from the thought. Put space between you and the thought. See it for what it is. It's separate from you. I want you to immediately get grounded. This means looking around the room, looking at the other person sleeping in the bed with you. Turn on the TV and listen to something that's happening right in the present. I want you to become in the moment, present, right now. The thought takes you away. It takes you back to the past, worrying about something, or into the future about something that might happen. I want you to separate from the thought. I want you to be focused on right now, in the moment, in the present, what's happening now. That breaks you from the thought. It separates you from the thought. It puts a space between you and the thought, and it gets you back to now. This breaks the pattern of negativity and gives your mind a chance to heal, to rest, to rejuvenate. This breaks through the cycle that's keeping your depersonalization and derealization going. Thought separating is a very strong tool that will not only work for you, it will continue to do so. There's an interesting story behind this, how I learned how to use this. This happened quite a while ago. I was worried because my husband was taking a stress test the next day. He's never worried about it, but I'm the designated worrier. He's fine, and I get myself all worked up about this. So I'm watching television, and I'm trying to concentrate, but I'm so busy worrying that it's really hard to do two things at once. When all of a sudden, there was a special news bulletin, breaking news on the television, and I was just drawn into it. How could you not? Everybody was focused on this. And in the moment that I shift from my own head, my own introspection, my own fears, into the breaking news story, I was focused on something else, and it snapped me out of the worry. And I realized I was very present, very in the now, very in the moment, and it totally dissolved the train of worry. I realized then and there that you really have to work at worry. You have to learn the habit of worry, and I was obviously very good at it. That was when things really changed. I realized you can be concerned about things and even worry a little bit, but you cannot let worry overwhelm you. I started using this method of separating myself from the worry and putting myself in the present moment, and it worked every single time. I even slept the night before his stress test because I learned to separate myself from that habit of worry. Every single time it began to slip in, I identified it and I saw it for what it was. I put space between me and the worry. I was witnessing the worry. I was observing it. I wasn't one with it anymore. I realized that the shock of that breaking news story brought me to my senses, that I could look back and think, what was I worrying about? And look at the worry. Well, you don't need something to actually shake you out of it that way. You can do it yourself. All you need to do is stop for a moment and look at what you're worried about and separate yourself from it. Look at it from a different angle, a different perspective, witness it, observe it, and then choose to move on. You can choose to put space between you and the worry, and that space is what saves you. That space turns it off, heals the mind, and lets you move forward without a tired mind, which means less depersonalization, healing from it, and going back to feeling like your old self again. This is what I want you to do. I want you to practice being the observer of your worry. Witness it instead of being one with it anymore. Learn to identify it. Remove yourself from it. Separate yourself from the thought. It's incredible the way you feel when you first start using this. I mean it. It feels like somebody gave you a magic wand to turn off the worry habit. It's so freeing. You feel like you've been let out of the prison that your mind has created for you. This technique is particularly essential to use when you start getting thoughts about depersonalization or derealization. And you know what the thoughts are. The thoughts are, oh my goodness, this is never going to leave. I must have damaged myself. This must be very serious. I must be sick. I probably took something that didn't sit right. When you start getting these thoughts, this is when you really have to start using thought separating. Start being in the moment, start witnessing the thoughts, observing them, looking at them from a different perspective, and separating yourself from that thought. The space that you are creating will save you because this is what unhooks you from the thought. This removes the constant worry and allows your mind to heal. This gets rid of the depersonalization, the derealization, and every moment that you use mind clearing and thought separating, you are healing. Your negative behaviors are the fuel that keeps depersonalization and derealization going. So every time you use these techniques, you are dissolving the habits that lead to depersonalization and derealization and preventing their return in the future. This will take some practice because you're so used to thinking the other way. Negativity is a strong habit to break, but it can be broken with these techniques, and you can do this. It's worked for me and so many others who have been caught up in both depersonalization and derealization, and it will work for you as well. The only reason that it's lasted this long is you've been approaching it incorrectly. Now you are going to change and go about it the right way. Trust the healing powers of your body and learn to step out of your own way. This is what you are doing. How could the body, how could the mind possibly rejuvenate itself when you're constantly throwing negativity at it? Now that you understand what you were doing and know how to do it differently, it's time to take a different path. Use these skills and they will not let you down. It's pure logic and it will not fail you. Stay out of your own way with negative thoughts and your body will restore itself. Your mind will recharge. What you're doing is removing the catalyst, and it's your responsibility to make sure you don't slip into negative thinking again. Catch yourself. Allow your body to heal without your interference or habit of worry. To reiterate, keep your adult voice in the forefront by using it repeatedly. It will always remind you of what is correct and steer you onto the correct course. You will absolutely begin to trust yourself more when you do this. We all have that voice of doubt that warns us about everything, but your adult voice is the voice that saves you. Let it guide you past depersonalization. Let me tell you, it feels so good to be able to know that you yourself, without medication, without deep analysis, are moving past depersonalization and derealization because you're using the right tools and you're using them correctly. And then your mind rejuvenates, it refreshes, it repairs itself and restores because you have learned to retrain the brain. Yes, that's exactly what you've been doing by changing negative behaviors into productive behaviors. And this is what heals the mind. As the days pass, the upsetting sensations of depersonalization and derealization become a mere nuisance as they begin to fade. You will notice them actually getting weaker. They diminish and then completely disappear. Just as they seem to appear, they will fade away with the correct approach. You now understand why they appeared, what they're all about, and how to clear them by sweeping away the habit of excess negativity and the habit of worry and fear. If you have issues in your life that need resolution, then it's important to look at those as well. Strong emotions often create a great discomfort in the mind. Therefore, to compensate, the mind often creates symptoms of anxiety, depersonalization, derealization, panic, and depression because they work. They distract from what is really bothering you that makes the mind very uncomfortable. When you're worried about depersonalization, derealization, anxiety, the mind is filled so much with these feelings that there is no time, no room to think about anything else. So it does serve a purpose sometimes. It distracts. So when you have some free time, when you're relaxed, sit down and think about anything in your life, any situations, any conflicts that may cause you distress, that maybe you haven't looked at because they cause you too much anger, which is often very uncomfortable for the mind to absorb. Just making a list of all your angers is enough to take off the pressure and release some of the symptoms of depersonalization, derealization, anxiety, and panic. It really can work because repressed feelings of anger can often lead to unconscious feelings of depersonalization and derealization, and this is what you need to avoid. Resolution of problems is encouraged rather than repression of emotions. It's essential to learn to speak up and speak out. Say what's truly on your mind and stand up for what you believe in. Don't always go along with the crowd because when you hold back your true feelings, they generally surface as depersonalization or derealization or anxiety symptoms. Anything held back will manifest as something else. Vented emotions are essential in dispelling tensions. The buildup of emotions may lead to scattered feelings, which also add to the production of depersonalization and derealization. Yes, knowledge is power. Practice these coping techniques and learn to put worry aside. Also learn to identify negativity and get rid of it as soon as possible. These exercises will ensure that. This enables you to have your own personal power and ability to interrupt any and all feelings of discomfort connected with depersonalization or derealization. The choice is yours. It always has been. It always will be. Have a wonderful day.